This part's going to be short. Measuring current. Let's think about this. Current. What is current? It's like the flow of charge through a wire or like a pipe. If you're measuring current, then you're kind of like, okay, let's go back to the water tank and hose and whatever analogy. If you're measuring the rate at which charge is flowing or the rate at which water is flowing, you have to break the current. Break the circuit. You have to have You have to have the current flow through. So this would connect to the multimeter, and then come back out and go through. That's how you would measure the current. You're measuring the charge flow, so it has to flow through the multimeter. So this is something you should write down. To measure current, you have to break the circuit and put the multimeter into the circuit. So like now the multimeter is part of the circuit, and that will measure the current. So let me write that. So to measure current, you must break the circuit, so disconnect things, and then connect the multimeter in to the circuit so that the multimeter is part of the circuit now. So this would connect to the multimeter, and then that would connect back out. So current should flow through the multimeter. That's what I'll write here. Current must flow through the multimeter to measure current. So that's important to write down. When we get to doing our activity, that'll be important to remember. Otherwise, you'll get weird readings and you won't know why, or maybe you won't know why anyway. But yeah, you'll get wrong readings and then you'll do it wrong. So measuring resistance. This one's kind of interesting as well. If we think about, okay, what is resistance? It's like the impedance or like the decreasing of current. You measure how much it decreases the current. So the way this happens, you can actually measure the resistance of a resistor of any component of your circuit. You can measure it without a battery. So you disconnect the battery. You can disconnect everything. You don't even have to have these wires coming out. What happens is you connect the multimeter to each end of whatever you're measuring the resistance of. So like there's a resistance in this switch, there's a resistance in the resistor, and there's also resistance in the light. All of these are going to impede the current a little bit. To measure it, though, you connect each lead of the multimeter to your whatever resistor you have, so in this case the switch, and then the multimeter will provide a current on its own. So it'll provide an output current, and then it'll go through the resistor, the current will decrease, and then it'll go back into the multimeter, and then the multimeter will read, okay, how much did it decrease? And then that will provide you with a resistance measurement. So in this case, you disconnect the battery. If you don't disconnect the battery, then you'll have the current. So this will output some current, and then this will output some current. So this doesn't know that you're actually putting in current if you have the battery connected. So you have to have the battery disconnected because this is outputting a certain amount of current. The multimeter knows how much current is being output by the multimeter, of course. So the current that, this is outputting this way. The current that it outputs, it knows how much it's outputting, so it measures how much it's getting on the other side of the resistor. So it measures the current difference, and then that uses that to calculate the resistance. If you have the battery attached, it'll screw up that calculation. So let me write that down because that's important also for our later activities. So to measure resistance, you must disconnect the battery from the circuit and measure across whichever resistor you're inquiring about. The multimeter provides its own current for this, so it's important that you do disconnect the battery. You don't need the battery. Actually, you can't have the battery because it'll mess up the reading, and maybe the multimeter. So that's it for this one. Maybe it's important to draw these pictures if you can make more sense of it. Just simple pictures. You don't have to draw it super detailed. But I think it would be helpful because we are going to be measuring current, we are going to be measuring resistance, we are going to be measuring voltage for certain things. It's going to be kind of cool. We'll use breadboards and we'll make circuits in series and parallel, and it's going to be a fun time. All right. Next up is Ohm's law and how to calculate things. It's going to be fun. Okay, get out of my face.